Thank you. Thank you. Bonsoir. That is the limit of my high school French, so I apologize for that. So yes, I am going to be showing you Resolve 9.
You will just have to switch to mirror mode.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I can handle that. Let's see if that is in fact true. So they always move these options around. Every version of the OS. Mirror displays. That seems to have worked. So Resolve 9, and actually I usually like to, for this presentation, start out from the desktop. Because the whole point of DaVinci Resolve 9 is that it is a huge reworking of the UI. Now, could you, well, I don't know if anyone can dim the lights. Thank you. So raise your hand if you're a current DaVinci Resolve user. I'm just curious. All right. So I'll make this interesting for everyone, I promise. But the thing about this version of Resolve is that they've completely reworked the UI, and they're in the process of reworking the UI. This is an alpha build, so bear with me if things crash. These things happen, although hopefully it won't. But those of you who are familiar with DaVinci Resolve know that before, when you launched Resolve, you ended up with a really big, gray, empty login screen. And it was a little befuddling. What do I do now? Now, you get a welcome screen. Isn't that nice? And that's the new version. Thank you very much. No. So this is the user registration screen. So now you have a very friendly UI for going in and dealing with the account settings of the different users that are going to be accessing this workstation. The thing you have to understand about Resolve is its pedigree is in big iron suites with multiple colorists using the same hardware. And so they retain that capability here. You can set up as many users as you want. Each user can have their own preferences, their own projects, all of that. In this case, I'm simply logging in as admin because I control everything. And when I double-click there, I get to my project manager. Again, this is a new thing for Resolve. Resolve now has the option to be used on a project basis. The previous versions of Resolve used primarily a database-driven structure. Very powerful, very complex. Not everyone needed that level of complexity. So in Resolve 9, you have the option, in fact, this is the new default, of having each project simply be a self-contained unit saved on a drive somewhere, just like lots of other applications. If you want, you can still enable the database-driven structure from before. It's your choice, either or. So I've got this project set up, and I have to give a shout out to Matt Pulowski in New York, producer of Zombie High, tentative name, for letting me use a scene from his movie. I always like to have interesting demo footage, and this certainly qualifies as interesting. First thing I want to do is to show you the new layout of the UI. Now, the previous version of Resolve was divided into, I believe, 8 or 9 different pages of functionality. And they kind of exposed everything in this page-driven interface, but it didn't necessarily make logical sense to new users or people who are new to Resolve coming from other systems. Now they've gone ahead and moved everything into a very nice workflow-driven interface. 5 pages, the media room, the conform room, the color room, the gallery, and the delivery page. So I'll just take you very quickly through all of these different pages. The media page is where we are by default. Anyone who's doing digital dailies or on-set work, this is the page where you bring in raw media clips from various sources, organize them. Basically, this is where you do all of your project management. One of the new things in Resolve 9 is this metadata editor. So I can go ahead and select any clip and quickly edit the metadata associated with it. There's a new flags interface, so I can flag clips of interest for various reasons. Hover scrubbing for the various thumbnails is new in this build, as is a metadata pop-up. So basically, the whole idea is to make it easier to browse the media from the media page as you organize everything that you're planning on creating dailies for, that sort of thing. You'll also notice over here to the right is an audio meters setup. 16 tracks of audio are now supported for incoming clips. Previous versions of Resolve, for those of you who don't know, would strip the audio in. Resolve has always been a video processing application. No longer. For the dailies crowd, if audio is associated with media, then it's carried through Resolve's processing and output on the other end. Moving on to the Conform page. The Conform page is where you're going to live if you're the kind of colorist that gets projects via EDL, AAF, XML from various sources from your clients that you just conform and get ready to work right off the bat. So the Conform room is dominated by this timeline. It mirrors the media pool that you saw from the media page. And in the Conform page, up here you've got your different projects. You can have multiple sessions, multiple timelines or edits for every project that you're working on. And you have some simple editorial functionality built into Resolve that lets you do the kinds of online editing sorts of things that you would want to take care of in terms of replacing updated VFX shots, taking care of updated stock footage once the final resolution material has been bought, that sort of thing. So all of that is here. All of the editorial tools have been arranged in a new toolbar. Again, the desire was to make this into something that would expose all of the functionality that Resolve has in a way that's comprehensible to people who aren't familiar with it. The color page is where all of the magic happens, and the color page is where most of the revisions have been made to the UI. Previous versions of Resolve would scatter various bits of functionality amongst multiple rooms down here. A lot of the functionality and basically everything that affects what you, functionality that lets you adjust your clips, anything that you do to affect your clips visually has been moved into the color page into a variety of palettes. It's now a new palette-driven interface. So for example, the sizing palette does everything that the previous format palette used to do. The tracker palette now contains all of the tracking functionality that used to be available on the viewer page. So everything you want to do is centralized right here on the color page, so you don't have to keep jumping around. The gallery page remains the place where you do all of your look management and still management. So in DaVinci Resolve, for those of you who don't know, Still Store also saves the various grades associated with each still. So in one fell swoop, you save both a still that you can refer to from a prior shot in the timeline and the grade associated with that still. All of that can be managed here. And then finally, the delivery page is where you set up renders to be output for various reasons, whether you're doing a round trip, whether you're mastering the entire project straight out of Resolve, or whether you're going to tape. All of that functionality is here. Those of you who remember prior versions of Resolve, this used to be available from a window inside of the color page. Now it's logically the last page in the UI. So that's a breakdown of the basic UI. Now I'd like to get into some of the fun features that they've added. And the most fun feature of all, for me as a colorist, is the new log mode of grading. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this image right here. I'm going to play through. So our heroine takes her heroic stand. Down here, all of these palettes to the left are pretty much color palettes. So I've got my original DaVinci style controls here. Those of you who want the bars, they haven't gone away. I also have an RGB mixer available to me, and a new palette which is all of my camera raw settings. So I have project-wide camera raw settings, but my individual per clip camera raw settings are now available right here in this palette. Jumping back to the color wheels palette, different palettes have different modes. So right now I'm in the default 3-way color mode, which is lift, gamma, gain. Log mode is the new mode. And I've been describing log mode as basically a series of color balance controls that exercise more specific, narrowly focused control over different tonal regions of the image. Of course, that's a lot of words, so let me just go ahead and show you a grade. I'm going to go ahead and first off, jack up the contrast. A new control in the log palette is this single contrast slider. And I'm going to go ahead and resize this image to be a little bit bigger. In fact, for now, I'll just collapse the timeline. You can resize the different panels found in the interface with a lot of flexibility. There are a lot of ways of customizing the UI. Now that the image is a little larger, one control jacks up or reduces my contrast. And I also have a pivot control that allows me to redefine the center point about which contrast is expanded. So now that I'm happy with my contrast, I'm going to move to the highlight control, and I'm going to go ahead and push some yellow into those highlights. Having done that, you can see how specific an adjustment this is. Now, I do have this high range control that lets me widen or narrow how much of the highlights I'm affecting. So I want to widen it up just a little bit. It has a nice soft fallout. And let's say I want to put a little bit of blue into my shadows. Everyone loves blue in their shadows, don't they? Here we go. Blue in the shadows, but obviously this is excessive. Even I can't countenance this. So I'm going to use the low range control to roll that back to just the darkest shadows. So with 3 adjustments, I've gone ahead and gone from, let me see, they changed the keyboard shortcuts on me, so I know how to do that. In 3 adjustments, I've gone from that to that, a very highly stylized look, and that's something that I really like from the log controls. And by the way, the contrast controls in the log palette are just as restrictive. So if I want to play games lightening or deepening the shadows, or if I want to play games with the highlight control, blowing those out or bringing them down, I have that option to do so. So another thing that I'd like to show off is the new windowing UI. Before, windows were a big collection of parameters. Now they have a much more pen-friendly series of controls. I'm going to pop open my timeline. I said I'm going to pop open my timeline. Guess I'm not. That's okay. I'll jump forward to, here we go. There we go, a zombie. So, yes, it's scary. In my opinion, it could be a little more scary. So first off, I'm going to add a bit of a primary grade, jack up the contrast. Maybe I'll go back into 3-way and warm up the highlights a little bit. Now I'm going to add a second node because I happen to know that there is an effects person who's going to take over this shot and add holes to his face and goose up the makeup. But let's say this is a no-budget piece, and this is as good as it gets. I can still do the filmmaker a few favors by going ahead and playing games with this guy's face. So I'm going to draw a custom shape. And now because the tracker is right here, conveniently on the color page, I'm going to jump straight there and use the new improved tracker interface to track forward. And you can see how solidly that shape follows along. It's a phenomenal tracker. If you haven't seen it before, I'll go ahead and loop this so I can play through. And you can see how stuck to his face. And this is a tough shot. So now that I've done that, say I want to scrub back. And to make him a little more scary, I will jump back into the log controls, jack up the contrast on his face. I want scary, scary shadows. I'll drop the saturation so he has a gray, pallid look. And now, if I turn that off and play through, you get the idea. If this were a final shot, I would go ahead and spend a little more time on those edges, but now the nice thing about the tracker interface, and this is new, is I have a tracker graph. So what I like about the tracker graph is it gives me a way to visually interact with the tracking data. Now, unfortunately, there's no shot in this entire project for which the track will fail. So let's just pretend that the track failed here, that I have a bit of garbage data in there. All I have to do is draw a bounding box over the section of the tracking information that I don't like, press the delete key. Oh, that's exciting. Well, in the previous build, I could press the delete key and just delete the one section of tracking data that was bad. Did I mention this was alpha? So anyway, big improvements. Those of you who are used to Resolve know what I'm talking about. Those of you who aren't see a much friendlier interface than you would have seen before. Not to mention streamlined. Another thing I like to point out, and this is a new feature, if I jump back to the Conform page and scroll back to the beginning, let's say right here I have a shot and I want to add a title. I have an After Effects animated title that I can open up as soon as everything refreshes. Here we go. And I'll define an in point and an out point. I just want that much of the title. I'll edit that in. You can see that now the alpha channel is being used. I didn't have to build an alpha. I didn't have to build a composite. This was not something I could do in previous versions of Resolve. Now I can. Just to show you there's nothing up my sleeve, if I jump to the color page, you can see there's just one node here. There isn't anything exotic wired up. And in fact, I can now choose to grade in context either with this composite enabled or by clicking the Unmix button without. So for example, if I wanted to jump to the previous shot, I can view the shots individually, so now I can make a grade without worrying about that title getting in the way. And I can turn that off and go back to working in context of the entire composite. So let's see if I can get this timeline open again. Ah, now it opens, just like a magic act. Another feature that I'm really fond of as a working colorist, and this works in conjunction with the metadata that you can add to these clips. I showed you there are these flags down here now. I can jump to the color page, and there is a new timeline filtering pop-up. So I click on that pop-up. I can go down to Show Flagged Clips. I just want to see the blue flagged clips. And I've gone ahead and taken the liberty of flagging all of her terrified close-ups. Let's say I want to do something special to her glasses, and I wanted to save that for the end of the session. I can now call up all those close-ups and go ahead and do whatever I need to do without having to sift my way through the entire timeline. I have it on good authority that this pop-up will have many more options to come. I'm not sure what they all are, but they'll be spectacular, I'm sure. Things like show color-corrected clips. Actually, I'm kind of hoping they do a show uncolor-corrected clips, so we'll see if that happens. But it's just a great way of filtering out different things in the timeline. I see that I'm running out of time, or rather, I'm out of time. And I actually have shown you all of the highlights. One thing I'll point out, though, just because I want to run things a little bit longer and torture you. Those of you who do digital dailies, they've included the ability to sync dailies. So if I go ahead and import broadcast wave files with timecode, all I have to do is click on, say, the master session that displays a string out of all the media in my project, and I can right-click and choose Link with Audio from selected bins. That's the other real marquee feature in this version that I wanted to make sure you knew about. And there's also the ability to sync up manually dailies, one clip at a time, if that's something you need to do. So those are the highlight features. There are plenty more. This is going to be released sometime in July. They're being deliberately vague about the date. But it's going to be real good stuff, so keep track of the Blackmagic website, and thank you very much.